between Eskom and City Power. Colleagues, I don't know if some of you recall, but we were here in November last year at the height of the dispute when the minister, together with the mayor, exercised an intergovernmental relations process to nip in the bud of what could have been a calamity by initiating a process to the dispute resolution. So colleagues, we are here today. We've come back to draw a full circle to that process that was initiated last year in November. So in essence, we are here to see the value and to witness the fruit of the IGR process. So colleagues, without further ado, I will hand over to the Minister, and he will take us through the update as far as the process is concerned. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tsakani, and good morning to everyone, and just to thank the members of the media for making time to join us this morning and for making it possible for us to communicate with the residents of the country, but more specifically the residents of Johannesburg. And also to thank the Executive Mayor, Councillor Dada Morero, for having taken time in his immensely busy schedule to make sure that we are able to occasion an opportunity for us to give feedback to the rest of the country on an instrument that we had initiated in November of last year to ensure that we bring to bear the power of intergovernmental relations and to ensure that service delivery continues uninterrupted. I also want to take the opportunity to thank City Power. Of course, the City of Johannesburg, led by the City Manager, Mr. Makola, the CEO of City Power, Chifularo Mashava, and of course, led by the board. The chair of the board is also part of this conversation, Kgosientsho. I'm making this point, and also our colleagues from Eskom, led here by Mr. Monde Bala, who is the head of distribution at Eskom. Making this point because a particularly taxing exercise, it required cool heads, it requires a degree of maturity for us to be able to settle, if you like, disputes that go as far back as about 10 years ago. And the quantum of the monies that were involved runs into tens of millions of rands. And if they were not to be amicably resolved, I think they were, over a period of time, going to endanger the financial sustainability of City Power, and also over a period the sustainability of Eskom. Of course, we know from an Eskom point of view that they are dealing with a number of municipalities across the country, so the aggregate was going to be particularly devastating on Eskom. And also just to thank SANEDI for having accepted the assignment that we had given to them, myself and Executive Mayor Dada Morero. Remember when we were here in November, we decided that we needed a technically competent party, but also a neutral party that can help us to resolve the dispute between Eskom and Power. I must say that SANEDI has been able to discharge and prosecute that responsibility. Thank you very much to the leadership of SANEDI. The chair of the board is here, and also the CEO, and the technical lead is also part of this discussion. I must mention from the onset that we are going to make the report of SANEDI public. We had committed, myself and the Executive Mayor, that we're going to satisfy our constitutional responsibilities of ensuring that we are able to surface all the facts, we are able to share all the information so that those who would want to familiarize themselves with some of the technical aspects of what has been found here are able to do so, and we are able to take learnings from the SANEDI report. We had, when we started the process in November, a bit stated a more optimistic timeline. I had made the point that in our own calculations, the exercise should not be more than 3 weeks. Of course, now we are several months later. So why is it that we are several months later? So first is that the scope of the SANEDI report, rather exercise or investigation, was a bit narrow, just focused on the issues that were before us, and those were issues of billing and metering. That exercise was done, and in the course of that, I think the parties felt that we needed to mine more raw data to ensure that the reconciliations are proper, and for us to mine that raw data, it required that we go back into time, and of course we can imagine the volume of the raw data, and us, the team, being able to go line by line. Myself and the Executive Mayor accepted the request from SANEDI and both parties, namely Eskom and City Power, for an extension of the time that we had communicated publicly. Myself and the Executive Mayor are of the opinion that we should invest in the integrity of this process, give it time, because there are learnings, things that should be learned and unlearned from this experience. So we should invest a lot of time in ensuring that we are able to understand the nature of the problem, we are able to diagnose it properly, and the prognosis must also be accurate. And SANEDI did generate a report in that regard, and that's the report that I said we will make public. But the teams, Eskom and City Power, were of the opinion that they needed to go beyond the scope of the SANEDI mandate, because there were other issues that were not necessarily in the scope of the SANEDI mandate, and they felt that those issues also needed to be attended to. They invested a lot of time in attending to those issues, and of course they needed a bit more time. And that's why we are landing today, having committed to a 3 weeks period, much later in the process. About 7 months later, we are coming back to the public to share with you the outcomes of that investigation. So the first thing we have learned here is that is the power of intergovernmental relations. So the dispute mechanisms, as codified in the law, are very powerful. So our view is that the courts are, if you like, a forum of last resort. So we shouldn't be burdening the courts with matters that can be resolved between the parties. Of course, initially we had gone before the courts, that is the various parties. We pulled them out of that court process. We don't think that we should burden the judges on making a determination on issues that are really of a technical nature and can be easily resolved. When I say easily resolved, of course, I don't understand the complexity and the amount of effort that goes into that. But once the numbers are before us, we should be in a position to resolve such matters. So we have invested in that process, and we have an outcome. The second thing we have learned, and SANEDI will say one or two things about some of the key findings, was that City Power in Johannesburg, I mean, as you can imagine, the scale of the exercise was huge. So there is no municipality or city that is bigger than Johannesburg. So if you are able to resolve the challenges with City Power, we should be able to resolve the challenges across the country. And I'm not about to suggest that the challenges will be identical. I'm simply talking about the complexity and the magnitude of what was before us. We don't think that there's any such challenge that can be beyond us anywhere in the country. So we have a template, if you like. So through the SANEDI exercise, through the leadership of the city and Eskom, we've been able to determine a template on how we should be in a position to initiate a process where there's a dispute. So if there's municipality X raising a dispute, now we know how to go about addressing that dispute, especially as it relates to billing. So the point I'm making is that now we are sitting with a template, and it's going to be relatively easy for us to deal with an encounter of a similar nature going into the future. And then the third aspect is what we have learned out of this is that leadership is key. So, like I said, the chair of the board here, Ms. Mashaba, the executive, or rather the city manager of Johannesburg, matured heads, cool minds, brought themselves into this conversation with the sole intention of resolving it. And also just the team from Eskom in this instance, led by Mr. Mwandebala, were able to come in with cool heads. Of course, you can imagine you want to maximize the returns for your own entity, but you do accept that on the strength and the balance of the evidence before you, there's give and take. I mean, you must relinquish certain positions, you must modify them, you must ensure that you water down some of the expectations without necessarily threatening the very existence of your own institution. So for us, those are the major lessons. So what is the nature of the settlement? So first, we were able to confirm that there are issues that have to do with the impact of load shedding. Remember that this period also spent that period where we had an intense load shedding. So when there's an absence of metering, you're doing estimates, and you can imagine you will not be accurate. So I think one of the lessons going into the future, ensure that there's metering, bulk metering, so that when there's load shedding, it must reach zero, because there's no bulk supply of electricity. And we have found that to be a challenge in this instance. And I think City Power was correct to say that, but during periods of load shedding, some of these issues were not accounted for. So those are some of the things that we're able to take account of, and what are some of the wheeling charges in parts of the city. Those parts were not factored into the computation of what was the bill that was given to City Power. But SANEDI will give a much more technical report. So the nature of the settlement is as follows: is that Johannesburg City Power, they will pay the 3.2 billion rands over a period of 4 years. So it's important that there's an appreciation that this is a big ticket of 3.2 billion rands. Of course, that amount has been in dispute, and City Power, I want to emphasize, and City of Johannesburg have done everything possible to maintain paying the current account. Despite all these difficulties, of course, there will be challenges from 1 month to the other, but the issue, the one in dispute, they remained in dispute until we resolve this matter. So 3.2 billion rand paid over a period of 4 years. And then we have also accepted that there are major challenges, and this is it's a nature of the structure of our tariff. So it's not necessarily a Joburg issue. There are major challenges with regards to tariffs during winter. I'm sure you know that there's a time of use, and during winter the tariff is particularly heavy. And of course, households, industries or customers find it very difficult to meet their obligations during winter. So we have accepted that during the winter period, so that we are able to extend that relief not only to City Power but also to the consumers. Of course, the consumers are paying their current account, but we don't want City Power to redirect that to be paying amounts that are in areas. So we have accepted that during the winter periods, there will be relief in relation to the payment of that 3.2 billion rands. So they will be paying it outside the winter period. Remember, I did say is the nature of the configuration of our tariff, so that we are able to provide that relief. And then we've been able to write off that 830 million, and that comes as a result of first, they don't have to pay an interest on what that which is being owed. I've made the point that Eskom has considered with regards to the periods of load shedding, the estimations, and also the penalties that have to do with notifiable maximum demand So all of those have been removed. As we remove them, they total to 830 million rands. So that 3.2 billion is less than 830 million rands, and that's a concession that the Eskom has made. And of course, the expectation is that we continue City Power to maintain the current account. So I must say that we are excited about this development. As you know, we have something almost similar in Tshwane. As and when municipalities come forward, we'll have these discussions on how best to provide a degree of relief. Of course, I mean, there must be a case that is presented, accepting that Eskom also has got its obligations. They need to collect, they generate electricity, that costs money, they must recover that money from the end user to reinvest it back into their asset base and also into generation of electricity. So I must say, emphasize that there's power in investing in intergovernmental relations, and we have been able to reach this point because of the maturity of leadership. So I really want to thank the Executive Mayor, Councillor Dada Morero, as I invite him to also share his insights. Thanks, Kgosientsho.
No, perhaps let me first greet you. Good morning, all of you. Just to express our sincere appreciation, especially for the Minister and his commitment to get us to where we are today. The process that we undertook from November, yes, it had its own challenges, but we want to acknowledge the work that the team had put in place to ensure that at the end we can arrive at a settlement that all of us will be comfortable with. And we think we're at the point where we are happy with the settlement as outlined by the Minister. So both parties, City Power and Eskom, are also happy. So it's a matter of now implementing the agreement as reached. And we also welcome the winter matter that Eskom has also put as part of the settlement, which will actually give some relief to the city during the winter month. So we are happy, nothing much from myself, and to thank the teams for having worked very hard. I know at some point there were almost black on black violence, but eventually they arrived at the settlement. So thank you very much. Yeah. Good.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister and Executive Mayor. Firstly, I think for placing the trust that you gave to SANEDI to be able to discharge of this responsibility. Yes, it wasn't an easy journey, but I think the scope was clear, I think, from our side to validate the meter reading at the bulk intake points for both the main meters and the check meters for both Eskom as well as the City Power. But also then to be able to take that information, compute it into a bill, so that we're then able to see the discrepancies, and those discrepancies then to be able to then take that forward in terms of how they need to be resolved. But also over and above that, just to make sure that I think going forward, all those issues are resolved by identifying some of the root causes, so that we become more preventative, but also we create a template that we can use, I think, throughout the country. So when I received that request, I then obviously, through Dr. Mate, then appointed a team to be able to do that, and therefore I'll allow Dr. Mate just to delve deeper into some of the details, so that we've got an appreciation, I think, of the magnitude of the problems, but also how we meticulously went through the process to make sure that the outcomes are credible, but also it's something that can be used, I think, going forward. So Dr. Mate, I'll just swap the seats quickly.
No, thank you very much, Board Chair and Good morning again, Minister, Executive Mayor, and good morning, everyone. I think SANEDI is very happy that we have reached this stage. We also indeed were very grateful for the trust that was given to us to undertake this task. So as indicated earlier, the process started in November, and I'll talk about the template. The board chair and the minister refers to the template so that you have an appreciation of what exactly happened. And I think what we've done with City Power and Eskom is equally applicable to other municipalities where there are challenges. So the process started in November. It started by an appointment of the technical lead, Prof. Mutli, who's sitting across the table over there. And then Prof. Mutli assembled a technical team both within SANEDI and also subject matter experts coming from Eskom and coming from City Power. They then embarked on a step-by-step process in terms of gathering the information, assessing the documents that were readily available. In some cases, some of the information was confidential. So issues of non-disclosure were taken into account. And then the process started. They developed a tool, and it's part of the know-how that we're going to take forward to other problematic municipalities. So this tool was then used to analyze the data. In some cases, the data was not, readily available. They had to mine the data, and then there was a validation of information. This was done through interviews and also desktop. And then the next step was the fact verification, cross-checking the information, ensuring that both parties, Eskom and City Power, the information that they've provided is credible. Then that led to a formulation of conclusions or observations in terms of what could be possible findings and the root causes. That led to a preliminary report. This report was shared to both parties. They had an opportunity to interrogate the numbers that were in this report and also some of the preliminary findings. The report was then concluded and shared with all the parties, and it eventually ended up with the minister. So the whole process took, as indicated by the minister earlier, initially 6 weeks, that's what we thought, but it ended up taking 3 months. But we've actually learned a lot out of this process. We've developed the know-how, as I indicated, that can be equally applicable to other municipalities. So what are the lessons learned in a nutshell? And if we need to get into the technical details, Prof. Muti will also do that. I think in the report, we captured that there was a break in communication, and I think Executive Mayor also alluded to that. So we are recommending monthly bilaterals that were there before that were discontinued to continue. The data sharing protocol, that's something that to some extent contributed to the challenges that were experienced, so that will be reinstated going forward. The board chair also spoke about the check metering and mock billing. Just to be on the safe side, just make sure that the infrastructure for metering is in place. And when there is load shedding or load reduction, there is no need to do estimates. You can just rely on the meter reading. Of course, it will be reading 0. Then the issue of estimation protocol. There will be instances where the metering equipment will not be functioning, either due to vandalism or theft or whatever the case might be. There are protocols that are in place in terms of how Eskom and City Power goes about doing the estimates. There is improvement that needs to be looked into in terms of how you take into account load shedding, load reduction going forward. And then the last one, the issue of notified maximum demand. I think there are improvements in terms of the process that Eskom follows. Best practice, I think, needs to be adopted, and inform the customer whenever there are challenges and engage. I think those are some of the key highlights from the report. Minister, thank you very much. Let me hand back to you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to...
Questions? No, just questions.
Colleagues, I think we've now come to that part where you can seek clarity. We'll allow questions from members of the media. We don't have a roving microphone, so when you do ask your question, please project such that you are audible. So by a raise of hands, colleagues, are there any questions in the room?
Alpha.
We've got Ms. Fariel.
Thank you.
And then the second one is Skara. Any other questions? We've got Mr.
Nabila.
Okay, there was a hand before you. Chris Yelland, and then Nabila. Ne? So in that order, we'll start with yourself, Fariel.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That's really good news. My name is Fariel Hafuji from the Daily Maverick. I wonder if it's correct, though, that this solves our service delivery challenges, especially with regards to power cuts in Joburg. Just some numbers. The last three quarterly reports show 29,000 low voltage outages in a quarter, then 30,800, then 34,154. So I think it's obvious to those of us who live in Joburg that there's still an electricity crisis. So how far does this go to solve that? And then section 79, note meeting proceedings as well as councillor notes, especially on WhatsApp group, suggests City Power has a 26 billion rand deficit in various parts. Could you shed some light on how much this helps and what the plan is for the rest of that debt? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Skara Mafukwane from Newsroom Africa. Minister, in an interview you did with my channel in November, at the height of this crisis, you mentioned at the time that the estimated amount owed to Eskom by municipalities was sitting at around roughly 90 billion rand. My question to you is, how soon will the rollout of this template be to other municipalities in order to recoup some of that money owed to Eskom? Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning to the Minister. Good morning. This meeting today is about billing, I guess. And I would like to raise an issue about overbilling by the City of Johannesburg and City Power to users of customers with prepaid electricity meters. I have raised this issue through the right channels with City Power, but to date have received no satisfactory response. I have proof here, which I can give to you, the Mayor, Head of City Power, that City Power is overbilling prepaid meter customers to the tune of 50%. In other words, if a customer buys 600 rands worth of electricity, they get charged a fixed charge of 300 rand, which is 50% higher than NERSA's allowed tariff. And if the same customer buys another 600 rand worth of electricity in the same month, they get charged another 300 rand fixed charge, which means on 1,200 rands worth of electricity procured, they are paying 600 rand of fixed charges in that month. I have the proof here. You're welcome to have a copy. And the receipts, the actual receipts showing the deductions. And as I say, I've raised this matter with City Power and have had no response. So I'm raising this matter formally now. Is City Power overbilling its poor customers by charging them fixed charges that are dramatically higher than those approved by NERSA? And if so, what are they going to do about it? Is this a fraud? Is this a scam? Or is this billing incompetence in City Power? I don't have the answers yet. That is why I'm asking the question, and I'm welcome to give you the proof. Thank you.
So this 3.2 billion is going to be paid over the next 4 years. How is that?
Can you introduce yourself,
Hi,
please?
it's Nabila Sheikh, ENCA. For the next 4 years, we're going to see this 3.2 billion being paid. How is it going to affect the consumer's pocket? So, you and I, in the next 4 years, tariff increases, because obviously this money is going to have to come from somewhere.
Okay, thank you for all of those questions. Are there any other questions? We'll hand over to the Minister and the Executive Mayor. They will direct the questions to the relevant colleagues. Thanks.
We can start with the Chris question on tariffs, overbilling. So I think we can address that one. And I think the issue around the power cuts and challenges on electricity supply would not really be part of the settlement agreement. That would mean it's as a result of the challenges that we have as the city, whether it's on infrastructure or any other issue. So it doesn't affect today's settlement, but should give a technical response to what is the real issue around that. We'll also deal with the issue around the 26 billion, so she will then give a proper response on that one. And Chris, the billing issue, would address it now. I think those are the two issues, and the Minister will then deal with the 90 billion. Consumers will not be affected. I think we must just answer that one, Navila. As you know that this is the debt that was accumulated, and we then agreed on settling it. So it does not affect the tariffs moving forward. You know that in May, we've already passed the tariffs for 2025-2026. So we are hoping that there will be no, as you know, that the city in most instances, it's always a pass-on, especially on electricity increases. So we're not worried about that, and it will not affect the consumers. As you know that, in fact, we're not talking about it, that winter tariffs, in fact, the city takes the costs, because in reality, we're not really charging what we're paying for from Eskom to the consumers. And I think we need to explain that in detail, because it's a benefit to our consumers, especially during the winter months. But they will explain it better. But it shouldn't affect consumers. We've already passed tariffs. We are waiting for the next tariffs, which will only come in 2026, 2027. But we've always said we should not get to a point where the tariffs become a heavy burden to our customers as the city. Would like to deal with the rest, Chief Laro.
There's what we call musical chairs, but today we're playing news chairs. So can we have a swap so that she's closer to the microphone?
Yeah, just come. No, come sit here. Now do let them know. Go annoyed. Come sit here. It's easier if you sit here. No, don't worry, sit here.
Thank you, Executive Mayor. Thank you, Minister, and good morning to everyone. And thank you for the questions. Starting with the one of the prepaid customers. So, with prepaid customers, we charge a basic fee of about 200 rands, whereas we charge the postpaid customers about 900 rands. So, last year, if you would recall, there was a process of TID, where we needed to validate meters. In that process, we obviously discovered customers who had bypassed their meters or their meters were vandalized. We corrected this in the period of from around December and January and February. So for those customers who either their meter would have been vandalized in that period, which is July last year up until February this year, or they would have bypassed their meter. When we then installed the new meters, it meant that we will then have to recover the basic charges of the previous months. So this has happened for a number of customers. We will continue to issue communication around that. We will engage with the affected customers. But if you have not paid the 200 rand in the other 6 months for 2024, it means when you then buy your tokens in 2025, we then recoup that money. But we will engage with the affected customers. We are more than happy to take the data that you have on yourself so that we then engage directly with the customers. But the system is programmed to recover all the amounts from July. It's an automated system. So that is on the prepaid one. With regards to the 26 billion rands for Section 79 reports, at this point I'm not aware of that exact figure of 26 billion rands. In terms of who we owe, we obviously would owe our service providers, we would owe our suppliers, but it does not get to that quantum of 26 billion rand. For Eskom, for example, we are talking about 3 billion rand. In terms of our service provider in general, per annum, we would spend about 3 billion rands, and we tend to pay all of that in the period of 12 months. So I'm not aware of the date of 26 billion rand. The big amount that I'm aware of would have been when we are talking about our infrastructure backlog, but that amount is about 44 billion rands at this point in time. I think that's it, Executive Mayor.
Just to answer the question from Skara, just to make the following point, and this is a transversal point. So we're sitting with two big problems, and the City Power Johannesburg episode is just a manifestation of a bigger problem. Electricity is unaffordable. We can't continue along this tariff path. We're getting to a situation here in the country where we see new dimensions of energy poverty. There are households today, as I speak to you, will not be able to afford the cost of electricity. We can have a conversation about the points that Chris was raising. Even if you are too clear that electricity is very expensive. So poor households have to make choices between a loaf of bread or buying the units, prepaid units. We're getting to a situation where industries that have got electricity as a dominant input cost are becoming increasingly uncompetitive. We have seen what the smelters are going through, and that has resulted in the decimation of jobs in that particular sector of our economy. And you can mention a number of sectors of the economy, and it's got an inflationary impact. So, I mean, things are becoming very expensive as a result of electricity. So what we are doing as a ministry is to review the electricity pricing policy. Otherwise, people want to have access to electricity. You want to have load shedding, you want to have load reduction, but people will not be able to afford the electricity. Then the second issue here is around the competitiveness of municipalities, their viability as centers of economic production. So the economy is not growing. So there's more and more of your customers that are unable to pay. Industries are closing. City Power is no more collecting what it used to collect because people are defaulting. I mean, if you were to ask Chifularo here, she will tell you how much is being owed. City manager will tell you how much they are being owed. And in return, Eskom is being owed. By the way, that number for municipalities now, I think it's close to about 370 billion rands that is owed to municipality in total. When I was here, we were close to 98 billion. I'm sure now we're over 100 billion. That is owed to Eskom. That equation is unsustainable by any measure. Municipalities find it very difficult to collect because consumers are under strain for objective reasons. Of course, I mean, there's issues of illegal connections. Having accounted for that, you still have a situation where municipalities are unable to pay. And therefore, Eskom is faced with an existential problem also because they are generating this electricity, they are spending money. They must collect from the consumer, the bulk consumer, and also where they are reticulating. They are finding it difficult to collect, so they are unable to reinvest back into their asset base. And it's going to result into, if not managed, just a total collapse of the electricity complex in the country. And that's something that we assist with. So, Skara, to your point, one of the solutions that Eskom has come up with, they canvassed with us, they've gone through their governance process, is something called the Distribution Agency Agreement. We are finalizing our own discussions internally with National Treasury. What that attempts to do is to support municipalities from a technical capacity point of view. You can go to, I don't think less than 5% of municipalities in this country have got professionally qualified electrical engineers, to use that as an example. It's only the Metro, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni that can afford that. The rest are not able to. Some of the municipalities can't compute the cost of supply studies. It's a minimum requirement. So you can't wake up one day and say, I'm going to increase the tariff because Eskom has increased the tariff. No, it doesn't work that way. You need to submit your case to NERSA and say, these are the cost of supply, and as a result of that, I am pleading for this increase. Some municipalities have not computed that because the skills are simply not there. So we're working with municipalities across the entire value chain. The debt relief program that is there only addresses the collection. We are saying that the problem doesn't start with collection, the problem starts up there. The fact that you don't have engineers, you can't do scenario planning, you can't do projections on what is going to be the increase in demand as a result of natural growth, as a result of industry investing in these spaces, and as a result of that, the capacity of the reticulation and distribution infrastructure is not sufficient to meet that growth, and that's why you're experiencing what you and I referred to as load reduction. Okay, in instances where you're able to do this computation, there's growth in demand. Of course, some of it is driven by illegal connections. I go to communities, they say, no, we're prepared to pay, Minister. You are prepared to pay tomorrow, just regularize us. But municipalities don't have the capital to invest in the infrastructure for reticulation. I'm not talking Johannesburg, I'm talking in general. And that's why people are subjected to load reduction. So we are finalizing these engagements and we'll come out on a program on how we end load reduction. That money doesn't sit with municipalities, they simply don't have it. It has to be designed somewhere for us to make that intervention. So working with Eskom, repurposing what we call the INEP grant, we are able to come with an intervention to help municipalities across the entire value chain. Then roll out smart meters, do completeness of billing. There are municipalities in this country that then build certain suburbs. They just don't have those suburbs. They are not billing them. So those suburbs will go, no, we want to pay, but I'm not receiving a bill. But yet they are providing that electricity. And then because they've purchased it from Eskom, bulk purchase, they must still pay, yet they are not collecting. Then we have instances where, yes, they are billing them, but the billing is estimates because they are not on prepaid. And then they are billing them in instances, of course, they are not on prepaid. Then they can't exercise credit control. So if you don't pay, I'm talking of those that can pay. I'm not talking about the indigent. The municipality does not have an effective instrument to initiate credit control, to deny you your right to electricity because you owe rates and taxes, you owe water, you must pay for that before you have your right to access prepaid tokens. That capacity is not there. That's why municipalities are owed the amount that they are being owed. The last part, the poor households. Municipalities are receiving an allocation for indigent. They take that allocation and use it for other purposes in the municipality, pay salaries, do other social services, and then don't pass it on to the rightful owners of that grant. So when you use a prepaid meter platform, you are able to front load and give those that are deserving this free electricity. But the general point, two issues. If we don't resolve them, no, Joburg, they'll find a way because it's a big city. But small, medium municipalities will not be able to afford. They are going to collapse. So it's not a matter of if, is when. And you are beginning to see it across. And this is our biggest revenue earner. Water and electricity, as Minister Majodina, they are owing water boards a lot of money. So the utilities that are meant to be giving them the revenue that is necessary to subsidize other services is diminishing. So municipalities, as we have conceived them, they are not able to discharge that function. It's a matter of time. So it's not when it is, it's not if, it's when. And that's why we are moving with speed to address this situation. So we are not defeated. So I'm simply saying we have mapped the problem statement, we have fashioned what a possible solution could be, we are going to address it. We know that the debt of municipalities to Eskom is growing on average 3 billion rands per month. So by the end of this year, if you are to compare what was at the beginning of the year, end of the year, you are sitting at 36 billion rands more of what is owed to Eskom. There is so much Eskom can absorb. You ask City Power, CEO will tell you how much is being owed. I don't know what is the average growth. There is so much that the city can absorb, beyond which then it's a cliff. We have to resolve the issues around electricity is very expensive. It's our responsibility as the minister. I'll come back and share with the country what is that intervention we're making. And I'm just saying this is a manifestation of a bigger problem. There's so much Executive Morero, Dada Morero can do. There is a cliff. Others have already gone down the cliff. We have to resolve this, and we'll come back once we finalize our own interactions in cabinet. Eskom has done its part, thanks to the leadership of Mr. Marokana, and in particular Monday here, Mr. Vala. The Eskom has approved, and municipalities were selling this to them. They are fine with the idea. We are finalizing it with Treasury and go to cabinet, and I'm confident that we'll come with a more enduring solution.
But just to add on, Chris, that would have to take what you have brought in, and the team will then attend. It will probably indicate some of the, if there's challenges in the system, so that we can respond to the billing. So the team is here. Once the interview is done, we'll just sit down with you and go through those accounts.
If I may take the opportunity just to
Chris,
say.
perhaps just so that we have a structured session, I just want to refer back to Ms. Sheikh. I think in terms of the Minister's response now, your question was covered as well in terms of the new dimensions of energy poverty. So we will take the last round of questions. And Chris, with all due respect, we just want to do it in an orderly structure, so we will take your question as well. So we are now entering that second round because all the questions from the first round have been answered. I start with the gentleman there. Please do introduce, there's a lady here first, and then we'll go to you, sir, and number 3, and then number 4, and then Chris will. And so we've got 5 questions. Introduce your name and the media house you represent.
Hello, my name is Julia Fish. I'm from Joburg. I think we just need to do some clarification issues across the board. For City Power, part of the issue was not just the amount in dispute, but it was making sure that the data that was being processed was accurate. So you have your check meters in place, and part of the dispute resolution was ensuring that the city and Eskom's check meters were now viable and accurate. So if you can maybe give a bit of an understanding as to where you are with the installation of those meters to ensuring that this is a sustainable solution and we're not going to be running into this issue going forward. In terms of the city's budget, in the adjustment budget of last year, it was stated that there was a revenue shortfall because Eskom owed the city 2 billion rand. Now we've seen that the trajectory is actually in the opposite direction, and the payment is 3.4 over the next 4 years. Where are we making that up in terms of the revenue flows within how we're reshaping, because that hasn't been allocated in this budget, and going forward, where that money is actually going to be coming from. Another long-standing issue with the city is, of course, the payment of pre-basic services money from the city that it receives from Treasury towards the entities. How is that going to make sure that that City Power is financially viable and able to pay its bulk services costs over to Eskom given that they are currently paying for the free basic electricity out of their operational costs. And then lastly, I think this is a very good opportunity, Mayor, for you to make a clarity statement about those tariff increases going forward. There's been a statement by your office saying that there will be no increases, but that is purely on the availability charges. So people have now been led to believe that that 12.5% increase is not happening, but it is just the increase on the prepaid service electricity charge. And I think it is important that we make that clarifying statement that there will be a tariff increase in line with the increases across the board. It's just the prepaid services thing. So I think it's important to let the media know and the public know that there is still a actual tariff increase going forward that will be effective from the 1st of July.
No, thank you very much. My name is Lunga. I'm from the Mail and Guardian. Mr. Mayor, I think it would be unfair not to ask you to say, are you confident tomorrow's motion that is going to pass? and Minister, as an NEC executive, how confident are you in the Mayor, and does the NEC support the Mayor's continual role in the city? Thank you.
Lunga, I think we are very clear from the onset. Lunga, you know what, I want to assist you because I had a conversation with my colleague. It's going to be a dedicated session for those kind of questions. Thanks.
I feel late.
I'll wait for a second. Now I'm for the motion. You also. Yeah.
So it's going now.
The third question?
No, I'll wait for the second. No, not covered.
It's also there. I'll wait.
Also, yours is like Lunga's one. Chris, yours?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, the lady.
Please.
I just wanted to understand, the minister, you mentioned a problem of collection revenue due to multiple problems within the sector, your Eskom-City Power society. But essentially, collection revenue has always been a problem within the city. So how exactly does the power entity plan to pay off the settlement debt over 4 years with it struggling to collect revenue? But also on top of that, especially with now having a grace period of during the winter period, how exactly are you guys now going to still sustain that eligibility to kind of cover the settlement over the 4-year mark? Will you guys be able to even reach that 4-year period and not that it will not even be extended beyond that? So yeah.
Okay.
Head of City Power, I'm sorry to dwell on the subject of overbilling by City Power, but I want to categorically refute any suggestion that the example I've given and others have got anything to do with theft of electricity, fraud, bypassing of meters, or arrear debt. In fact, to support what I'm saying, this particular customer whose proof I'm going to give you has already been audited by City Power. This matter has been going on for 6 months. Has already been audited by City Power, and the money has been refunded to her. But every month, it's the same. The problem is not solved. So she has to go in every month to get a refund. And she has been audited. There is no question of fraud. So this is a question of overbilling by City Power
That is why
it is not being resolved. And I just wanted to refute categorically the suggestion that was made that this is to do with bypassing of meters or fraud. I can assure you City Power have done their homework and checked that out carefully already.
So I just want to add, can you also just state that City Power has paid its current account? The billing is for other things.
Let me just say, Chris, that is why we said we deal with the specifics, but it doesn't take away that in certain instances you do have bypassing of meters and also, so it might be a specific cases that you have, and we'll give the attention to those cases and try to resolve them. Yes, we did say that there will be no increase in terms of the availability charge, and that's what we passed as we passed our budget and our tariffs, and we are really speaking to that matter that relates to the availability charge of electricity. I think he will ask the city manager just to deal with the issues around the adjustment budgets. It will be quite easy. Lunga and Alpha will see them later with the issues. Maybe, Kwena, let's also respond to the collection that you'd know that as we passed our budget, we also made a commitment that we are going to increase. We're going to put as much programs as possible to increase our capacity and our ability to collect, which has been a bit of a challenge. We are collecting now. We are seeing an improvement. We have agreed on a target of 90% in terms of our collection, and we are seeing an improvement. It's a bit slow, but we are seeing it. I think last month we were at about 87% collection. A month before that we were at about 90%. We did quite well in that month. So it varies month to month, but we want to keep it at 90% to be able to deal with all issues in the city. Secondly, you'd see that we do spend a particular amount on our bulk purchases, so we'll be able to service the settlement. With Eskom, we don't see that there will be a challenge in relation to servicing the agreement or the settlement. As you know that we do put money aside for bulk purchases on an annual basis, so we will cover the costs. We're also doing what we call reforms on trading entities, which is City Power, Joburg Water, and Pick It Up, and the intention is to deal exactly with how we ensure collection and reinvestments into infrastructure. So that's what we are doing now. It's a partnership with National Treasury, and we think it will yield results or desired results. So that's what we're doing on the collection. You can deal with the budget issue, and
accuracy.
There's an issue around Julia around data produced. Yeah, if you can also deal with that.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Executive Mayor and the Minister. So, just to address the issue around the data accuracy, you are correct that the challenge was around the alignment of the main meter from Eskom and the check meters within City Power, which were already in place, because then it distorted the data. So our first approach when we resolved this dispute was on, we should not be back in this place in the next 10 years. And the point was, let us address the data accuracy through the main meter and the check meter. So that we can confirm is now in place. We've also additionally made sure that there are help desk, service desks that will be interacting between Eskom and City Power, so that when there's a disparity between the data, the technical teams are able to resolve immediately and we don't have challenges when we get to the billing. In relation to the adjustment, indeed, the current debt, maybe let me address the fact that yes, our current account has been paid, and we have been paying the current account even though we had the dispute. So the adjustment was not only linked to the current debt. The adjustment in the revenue was based on the collection. And I think the Minister has addressed the structural challenge in terms of the economy and the affordability. So what we are doing as the city is to look at two areas: reduce the bulk metering and reduce that cost, reduce the technical losses and non-technical losses, so that your balance sheet is then stabilized, which is a continuous process that we have to engage in. Then, of course, improve the revenue. I think the Mayor spoke about collection of revenue. Just as an example, we've looked at, if you look at, there are 4 areas in the municipality where we collect, and the property rate is actually the biggest one. So we've intervened in terms of the general valuation role, and that's why you've seen a bit of the increase, because we are aware that we can't put the strain on City Power the way we used to collect from an energy perspective. So it means we have to look at the revenue collection in a different area, and that's why we are able to stabilize. So we are looking at that. Then we've done the data update, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the billing process, to make sure that we tighten the collection from the billing system and that the bill is correct, reduce the number of queries so that people who are able to afford to pay can pay. And of course, we've taken some decision in terms of where the bill should go. So I think those are the interventions we've done, and they are continuous in nature, and I think we'll improve our collections. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I think Arabi, the grant that we received.
Oh, okay. So the last one is really on the distribution of the equitable share that we receive. As you know, part of the allocation from National Treasury, which is the work we are doing on the trading reforms, is to clearly allocate the equitable share from National Treasury. But we've asked City Power to look at what is the cost that we are providing energy and water in the informal settlements, and then allocate. But what we've done over the years, Mr. Mayor, we've used the Human Settlement Grant, the Urban Development Grant, that we then allocate to City Power and Water to try and reduce the cost. But we are currently working on making sure we calculate the cost. We've asked Power, put in some meters, and Water, put in meters in the informal settlement, bulk meters, so that we are then able to allocate accurately the equitable share that we receive from National Treasury. But it's part and parcel of the trading reforms that we are currently implementing, and Council has approved those trading reforms from water and electricity, and we are coming with pick it up as well to try and reduce those costs. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that was
colleagues, I think all of the questions have been responded to. Of course, Lunga and Alpha will have a session.
They can remain.
Perhaps just to reiterate the fact that the SANEDI reports will be made public because transparency and public accountability is not something which is an issue, and therefore that is why we called you here today, so that we draw a full circle to a process that was of significant public interest, which was also initiated in November. So that will be shared with everyone. I think we have indeed come to the end of today's session. Any further questions as they pertain to respective officers will be shared to those respective officers. And just to thank you once again for enabling us to communicate to the South African citizenry with regards to such pertinent issues of significant impact and significance. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.